Right now, you are sitting somewhere comfortable. Maybe a chair, maybe a bed. You have food within reach, or you could have it within the hour. The temperature around you is controlled. You are not being hunted, and yet something in you feels wrong. A low hum of restlessness you cannot explain. A nagging sense that you were built for something you are not doing. That feeling has a name, and the name is older than civilization. What if the life you are living right now is the least suited life your biology was ever designed for? What if every single thing that frustrates you, bores you, keeps you up at night, or makes you feel hollow is not a personal failure, but a biological one? What if you were not born late into history, but born too late, dropped into a world your body and mind are fundamentally unprepared to handle? This is not a metaphor. The science is real, and it rewrites everything you think you know about why you feel the way you do. Your body is ancient. Not metaphorically ancient, actually literally physically ancient. The skeleton inside you, the nervous system firing through your chest right now, the hormones flooding your bloodstream when you feel anxious or elated or restless, they were shaped by a world that no longer exists. A world of open grassland and thick forest. A world of fire at night and silence at noon. A world where your closest companions numbered in the dozens, not the thousands. And the name of that world is the Pleistocene. The Pleistocene epoch began roughly 2.6 million years ago and ended approximately 11,700 years ago. For almost all of that span, your ancestors lived as hunter-gatherers. They tracked animals across open terrain. They gathered fruit and dug up roots and read weather patterns in the clouds. They slept when it was dark and moved when it was light. And they did this not for a few generations, not for a few centuries, but for roughly 100,000 generations. 100,000 generations. By contrast, agriculture has existed for only about 500 generations, writing for maybe 300, cities for fewer than 400. The Industrial Revolution happened less than 10 generations ago. Your smartphone has existed for fewer than 2. Here is what that means. Your body had 100,000 generations to adapt to the Pleistocene. It has had almost no time at all to adapt to the world you are living in right now. The evolutionary psychologist John Tooby, who co-founded the field of evolutionary psychology alongside Lita Cosmides at the University of California, Santa Barbara, described this as the central problem of modern human existence. Your brain, he argued, is not a general-purpose computer. It is a collection of specialized programs built to solve specific problems that mostly no longer exist. And yet those programs are still running, right now inside you. Imagine buying a piece of software designed for a 1990s operating system and trying to run it on a machine built in 2024. It does not crash entirely, but it behaves strangely. It freezes at unpredictable moments. It uses resources for tasks that serve no purpose. It is optimized for a context that no longer exists. That is your nervous system. That is your brain. That is you. So what was the world actually like, the world you were designed for? Because here is where most people stop at a vague romantic image, spears and campfires and open skies. The reality was far more specific and far more interesting. Research by the anthropologist Kim Hill at Arizona State University, who spent decades living alongside and documenting the Ach people of Paraguay, one of the last surviving hunter-gatherer societies on Earth, revealed something that should stop you cold. The average Ach adult spent roughly 4 to 6 hours per day in what we would call productive activity: hunting, foraging, preparing food, making tools. The rest of the day was social time, rest, play, storytelling, music. 4 to 6 hours, not 8, not 10, not the 12-hour grind of a modern knowledge worker. 4 to 6 hours of purposeful movement, surrounded by people they had known their entire lives, in pursuit of goals with immediate, visible, tangible results. You worked. You saw the direct consequence of your effort the same day it happened. Compare that to your working week. You spend hours in front of a screen performing tasks whose results you may not see for months. For an organization you are largely invisible inside, in exchange for numbers on a screen that you trade for goods produced by strangers on the other side of the planet. Every link in that chain is invisible. Every result is deferred. Every consequence is abstract. Your brain did not evolve for abstract. It evolved for immediate. The anthropologist and neuroscientist Robin Dunbar at Oxford University spent years studying the social lives of primates and early humans and produced one of the most quoted findings in social neuroscience. The number is 150. Dunbar's number, as it came to be known, is his estimate of the cognitive limit of the human social group, the maximum number of stable, meaningful relationships the human brain can maintain at once, 150. For most of human prehistory, that was roughly the size of your tribe. You knew everyone. Everyone knew you. Your reputation was local, immediate, and real. Your failures were witnessed by people who also witnessed your recoveries. Your successes were celebrated by the same faces every single time. Now look at your life. You may have thousands of social media followers. You may interact daily with dozens of people who mean almost nothing to you and almost never with the handful who mean everything. You are surrounded by strangers. You are performing for an invisible audience. And your brain, which evolved to track 150 relationships in granular emotional detail, is trying to process thousands of social signals every single day. No wonder you are exhausted. No wonder it feels like something is wrong. Something is wrong. Not with you, with the mismatch. The psychologist and researcher Rangan Chatterjee, who has written extensively on the modern epidemic of chronic stress, has argued that the single greatest driver of the loneliness epidemic in the developed world is not a shortage of people. It is a shortage of the right kind of people in the right kind of proximity with the right kind of shared purpose. Hunter-gatherer groups were bound together not just by proximity but by necessity. Your survival depended on the people around you, and their survival depended on you. That mutual dependence created a kind of social glue that no app, no platform, and no notification can replicate. There is a word in evolutionary psychology for the gap between the environment you evolved to inhabit and the environment you actually inhabit. It is called evolutionary mismatch, and it is not a fringe idea. It is increasingly the organizing framework through which researchers in psychology, medicine, and anthropology are trying to understand the modern mental health crisis, the chronic disease epidemic, and the rising tide of what has been loosely called existential emptiness. Because here is the thing, you are not lazy, you are not broken, you are not uniquely weak or fragile or addicted to distraction. You are a Pleistocene creature living inside a post-industrial world. And the symptoms of that mismatch are written all over your body. Consider sleep, your circadian rhythm, the internal biological clock that governs when you feel alert and when you feel drowsy, was calibrated over millions of years to respond to one primary signal: natural light, sunlight in the morning, fire at dusk, darkness at night. The neuroscientist Matthew Walker at the University of California, Berkeley, who wrote the landmark book Why We Sleep, has documented in exhaustive detail what happens when that ancient rhythm is disrupted by artificial light, especially the blue spectrum light emitted by screens. Your brain interprets that light as midday sunlight. It suppresses melatonin. It delays sleep. It shortens the deep, slow wave sleep cycles that consolidate memory, repair tissue, and regulate emotion. You wake up the next morning with a nervous system that never fully recovered, and you do it again the next night, and the next. And over months and years, the damage accumulates in ways that look to modern medicine like depression, anxiety, metabolic disorder, impaired immunity, and cognitive decline. But to an evolutionary biologist, it looks like something simpler. It looks like an animal being forced to live in the wrong environment. Now consider movement. Your ancestors did not exercise, not in the way you think about exercise. They did not go to a gym for 45 minutes 3 times a week. They moved constantly all day at low intensity, with frequent bursts of high intensity when chasing prey or fleeing danger. The anthropologist Herman Pontzer at Duke University has spent years studying the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last true hunter-gatherer populations on Earth, and his findings are genuinely shocking. The Hadza walk between 5 and 10 miles per day, every day, without thinking about it, without tracking it, without motivation podcasts. They move because movement is embedded in the structure of their existence. Their bodies require food, so their bodies move. There is no separation between their physical activity and their purpose. You, by contrast, have engineered movement almost entirely out of your daily existence. Cars, elevators, chairs, delivery apps. And then, to compensate, you schedule movement, you carve out a window, you change your clothes, you travel to a building specifically designed for physical effort, and then you travel back. The movement is real, but it is disconnected from everything. It produces results that are abstract, a number on a scale, a metric on a watch, rather than immediate and tangible. The animal in you knows the difference, and the animal in you is restless. The psychiatrist and researcher John Tooby at Harvard Medical School has spent much of his career studying the relationship between physical movement and mental health. His work suggests that exercise is not merely beneficial to the brain, it is constitutive of normal brain function. The brain you are supposed to have, the brain your genes expect you to be running, is a brain that moves through space for hours every day. A brain that is sedentary is, in a very literal biochemical sense, a brain running below its own baseline. Dopamine, serotonin, norepinephrine, the neurotransmitters most commonly associated with mood, motivation, and focus. All of them are released and regulated in part by physical movement. Sit still for long enough and you are not just physically underactive. You are chemically depleted. There is a particular cruelty to this mismatch, because the modern world has not simply removed the conditions your brain was built for. It has replaced them with near-perfect simulations. Simulations that trigger the same ancient reward circuitry without delivering any of the real-world outcomes that circuitry evolved to produce. Consider sugar. Your ancestors encountered it rarely. Ripe fruit, wild honey, the occasional lucky find. When they did encounter it, the evolutionary correct response was to consume as much as possible because sugar meant energy and energy was survival. The hedonic response to sweetness, that spike of pleasure, that drive to keep eating, was an adaptive response to scarcity. Now you live inside a world of engineered sweetness, ultra-processed foods calibrated by food scientists to hit every pleasure receptor your ancestral brain possesses. The signal fires, the dopamine spikes, your body says more. But the context that made that signal useful, the scarcity, the effort, the rarity, is gone. What remains is just the craving, endlessly triggered, endlessly unsatisfied, in a world where the thing you are craving is never scarce and never costs you anything. The same logic applies to social validation. Your ancestors lived in small groups where status was visible, immediate, and consequential. Being valued by your tribe was not vanity, it was survival. The desire for approval was adaptive. The pleasure of being seen, recognized, and respected by your group was a neurochemical signal that told your brain you are safe, you belong, you will survive the winter. Now look at what your phone does to that circuitry. Every notification, every like, every comment, each one is a tiny, cheap, digital version of tribal recognition. Your brain cannot tell the difference. It fires the same ancient signal, but the satisfaction is hollow and temporary because the signal was never designed for this context. It was designed for a world where the approval of your tribe was earned through genuine contribution and genuine trust. A like from a stranger costs nothing. Your ancestral brain does not know that. Jonathan Haidt, the social psychologist at New York University, has written extensively on how social media exploits exactly this mismatch. The weaponization of an ancient social reward system by platforms designed to maximize engagement rather than well-being. The mechanism is the same as ultra-processed food, an ancient signal, a modern trigger, and a feedback loop with no natural endpoint. So here is the question you have been building toward. What do you actually do about this? Because here is the counterintuitive truth. You cannot go back, and you would not want to. The Pleistocene was not paradise. It was infection, predation, infant mortality, and a lifespan that averaged somewhere between 30 and 40 years. The fact that you can read this, that you have access to medicine and food security and a world almost entirely free of immediate physical danger is a miracle of accumulated human effort. The modern world is By almost every measurable standard, safer, longer, and less painful than anything your ancestors experienced. The mismatch is real, but the solution is not nostalgia. It is calibration. What the evolutionary mismatch framework gives you is not a reason to reject modernity. It gives you a diagnostic lens, a way of reading your own discomfort as information rather than as failure. When you feel restless without knowing why, that restlessness is your body looking for purposeful movement in a world that has removed it. When you feel lonely in a crowd, that loneliness is your social brain reaching for the depth of connection it was built to sustain. When you feel unmotivated despite having everything you need, that lack of motivation is your reward circuitry looking for the immediate, visible consequences it evolved to respond to. Every one of those signals is not a symptom of something wrong with you. It is a symptom of something wrong with the fit. The paleoanthropologist Ian Tattersall at the American Museum of Natural History has spent decades studying what makes Homo sapiens unique. What allowed this one species, out of all the hominins that have existed, to reshape the planet in its own image? His answer is cognitive flexibility, the capacity to imagine alternatives. The capacity to look at the world as it is and ask, what if it were different? That capacity is the reason you are reading this right now. It is the reason you have cities and medicine and the internet. And it is also, if you choose to use it, the reason you can look at the gap between the world you were designed for and the world you actually inhabit and start to close it, not by tearing down modernity, but by strategically reintroducing the conditions your biology needs to function at its peak. Move every day, not in a gym necessarily, but constantly as a background condition of your existence. Eat food that your great-great-grandmother would recognize. Sleep in genuine darkness, because your ancestors did not have street lamps or notification banners. Invest in a small number of deep relationships rather than an enormous number of shallow ones. Find work, even small amounts of it, where you can see the direct result of your effort. These are not wellness hacks. They are evolutionary corrections. And here is the last thing, the thing that will follow you out of this video and into your day. The feeling you started with, that low hum of wrongness, that restlessness you cannot name, is not a sign that you are failing at being human. It is a sign that you are successfully being the kind of human that no longer fits the world it finds itself in. You are a Pleistocene mind in a post-industrial cage, and the cage was built with the best of intentions, but it was never built for you. Tonight, when you feel that hum again, remember this: that restlessness is 2.6 million years old. It is not a flaw, it is a message. And now, for the first time, you know what it is trying to say.